What is the most famous name in motorcycling? Could it be the Triumph Bonneville? Hello again, I'm James, the Grumpy Petrolhead, and we'd like to share with you why we bought this 1966 Triumph Bonneville and what is it like to have owned this bike for nearly 30 years. In 1958, Triumph attained an unofficial land speed record at the Bonneville Salt Flats in America, and they wanted to bring out their new latest model based on the 650 single carburettor Triumph, the T110, and so they called their latest flagship bike the Triumph Bonneville. T120 refers to Triumph 120 miles per hour. The idea was this bike is capable of 120 mile an hour. Well, it's not, and even if it was, it'd probably only do it once. And the 650 being the T110, so 110 miles an hour. The 500, the T100, 100 mile an hour bike. The distinguishing feature of the Triumph Bonneville, or T120, as opposed to the T110, is the twin carburettors. The T110 had single carburettors. Up until 1962, the Triumph Bonneville had a true separate gearbox, and the gearbox casting was literally totally separate to the engine. And from 1962 onwards, the Triumph brought out their unit construction engine. So the gearbox is now encased in the same casting as the engine, although it still runs in separate oil. Another development from 1962 was the frame. They changed it to a single down tube from a twin down tube. Apparently that gave the machine better handling. If anybody's watching has had experience of riding both frames, I haven't, I've only ridden the later frame. Was it better handling, or was it a marketing thing? Was it perhaps it was easier and cheaper to manufacture this new frame? But it'd be great to hear from you if anybody has ridden both bikes. In the mid-80s, when I was a much younger man, I owned a Triumph 500 Daytona, another twin carburetted bike, and I loved that bike. That was a terrific thing, that was. But mine had got a bit tight and I needed the money to pay the rent, so I had to sell it. And it wasn't until 1990 when I was involved in a motorcycle business, and we had a Yamaha franchise. And once a year we would choose the bikes from Yamaha, usually at a motorcycle show, and pre-order them for delivery in the following year, throughout the year. So in 1990, the show was at the NEC in Birmingham, and across the road is the National Motorcycle Museum. So after we'd chosen our bikes and tried to guess what we were going to sell for the following season, we hopped over to have a wander around the museum. And then I saw a 60s Triumph Bonneville, and having had a Triumph before, it rekindled my interest in the Triumph. So that's when I started thinking about I'd like to buy a Bonneville. In May 1996, I put on my best shirt and tie and I went to see my bank manager, and I borrowed some money so that I could go buy this Triumph Bonneville, which was for sale fairly locally. For some reason which I can't remember, I had to re-register it because I wasn't able to keep the original number plate that came with the bike. So I sent the details off to the Triumph Owners Club to get a date of manufacturer so that I could register the bike and get a correct number plate. And here's what I found. The Triumph was assembled on the 3rd of May 1966. It was then dispatched to Bob King's of Bedford on the 10th of May 1966. So to the month, I bought the bike when it was exactly 30 years old. It was also nice to discover that the bike was a proper local bike to me where I lived in Bedford. And then it got me thinking that when I was 2 years old, I literally lived a couple of miles away from where this bike was delivered to Bob King's. Does anyone remember Bob King's in Bedford? If you do, let me know in the comments. Assuming I keep the bike for another year, when the bike is 60 years old, I will have owned it for 30 years. How about that? I would have owned this bike for 30 years. And in that time we've proper used it. A lot of the time two up with Catherine on the back, VMCC meetings, club runs, just going out and about on it. And for a while I even commuted on it to work and back. One of the things we did on the bike was the Triumph Bonneville 40th anniversary, where we rode up to Coventry on the bike, two up with Catherine on the back. And I remember we were going up a very steep hill in some very slow moving traffic, and I was sort of near the front of a bunch of other Bonnevilles, and my clutch started to get a little hot and started to protest a bit. And I remember I was pulling the clutch in hard and the bike was still creeping forward. So we edged past the lay-by and I pulled in thinking, oh, I'm going to have to let the clutch cool down. But kind of thankfully, really, about another 10 or 15 bikes followed me in and all pulled up on the lay-by as well, all with the same problem. Our clutches were just overheating. We just sat around for 10-15 minutes chatting while it cooled down. And I thought, oh, I felt quite relieved that it wasn't just me. After owning this bike for 30 years, still find that hard to believe. We've had to do a lot of repairs and maintenance on it. So I thought I'd give you a quick run through of all the things we've done to the bike over the years, and it'll give you a good idea of what it's like to maintain something like this. So here we go. I've changed the mudguards to stainless steel. When I was going to and from work, the original mudguards, which I still have, they were starting to corrode a bit, so I thought I'd put these stainless steel guards on because they're not going to corrode, and I think they look rather nice. Shock absorbers, I think I've got through about 3 shock absorbers now. Once because I broke down and had to go back on a trailer, and I hadn't noticed, but when the guy strapped the bike down, he strapped it on one of the shock absorbers and bent it. Of course, I didn't realise till after I got several days when I went back to look at the bike. When I bought the bike, it actually had the wrong carburettors on it. Now, a 1966 model Triumph should have monoblock carbs where the float bowls sit to the side of the body of the carburettor. And the carburettors that I had on the bike were too small, so I replaced those, but I put on concentric carburettors. I've since replaced my concentric carburettors because I left the bike for a period of time where I left the fuel in the carburettor for about 1.5 years, and the little drillings for the pilot system in these concentric carburettors, they're really hard to clean out, and I think because of the ethanol in the petrol, I tried ultrasonic cleaning them, but I couldn't get them cleaned. So a couple of years ago I just bought a new set of carburettors. We wore out a set of pistons and barrels, and when I stripped it down, I found that they had really high compression pistons in there, so I changed them to standard compression pistons, new pistons and new barrels, and I had the cylinder head all rebuilt, some of which I did, and the bits I couldn't do I took to a local engineer. So we had new valves and ground the seat in and guides. And the thing about the cylinder head was it had been skimmed a few times previously, but fortunately these days you can buy slightly thicker head gaskets so that you're not ending up with too much in the way of high compression. In my vain attempt to stop oil leaks, I have changed the push rods and the push rod tubes, and I've put in new valve adjusters and new camshaft followers as well. I think I'm on my 3rd set of silencers. The first set, they were really long and I didn't like the look of them, so I changed them to the shorter, stubbier ones. And then I was out for the ride with my friend, and he was on a 500 Triumph following behind, and the poor fella had to dodge one of my silencers as it fell off and bounced in front of him, but no harm done. I've also changed the head race bearings. I've had several goes at finding the handlebars that I like the best, and I've settled on these, and I actually took these off a 500cc AGS from the 50s, but the shape and the look of them and the feel of them, yeah, I'm happy. After 30 years I think I've found some handlebars I like. I've got through a few fork seals. The actual rubbers that usually cover these springs, they got a little bit perished. But I took them off and I thought, you know what, I quite like the look of it without it. But you know, I guess I'll have to put some on at some point. Now, a 66 model had a single leading shoe brake. When I bought the bike, it had a 7-inch twin leading shoe brake, and it was a terrific brake. And a friend of mine who has a 500 Triumph, he was offered an 8-inch twin leading shoe brake. So we did a deal where he had my 7-inch twin leading shoe brake on his 500 Triumph, and I had the 8-inch twin leading shoe brake on the 650. The only thing was the 7-inch twin leading shoe brake that is now on my Pals 500 is actually a better brake, and I think it's to do with the brake linings. I think brake linings have I think if you can find a really old stock of brake linings, I think that's probably the best braking you can get. When I worked as a tyre fitter many years ago, I came to work on my Triumph, and a customer was admiring the bike, and we did a little job for him. We just changed some tyres over on some loose rims, and he said, "What do I owe you?" I said, "No, don't worry about it." And he said, "Well, I've got a proper 12-volt horn for a Triumph." And at the time I had like one of those pressed steel aftermarket ones. And he said, "I'll bring it in for you." I said, "Yeah, sure, that'd be great." Thinking I'd never see him again. There was a busy Saturday, and we were really running around trying to keep up with work. And I did see out the corner of my eye, I saw this fella that we'd swapped the tyres around for him a few days ago. And then I didn't see him again. And at the end of the day, when I went to ride home on my bike, this horn was left on this seat for me. Here's something I recommend if you've got one of these Triumphs. They have a 5-plate clutch arrangement, and you can get a 7-plate clutch conversion where the plates they're thinner, but overall you get more surface area. So the grip is better, and that means you can have less pressure on the springs inside. So I fitted that in 2003, and since then I've only adjusted the clutch once when it just started to slip. On this machine I've fitted electronic ignition, and I've also fitted the micro power coils from Boyer Branston. I have a little bit of a problem kick-starting motorcycles these days. I have arthritis in my hips, and so I needed to get the bike as easy to start as I could get it. So with my new ignition coils and my new ignition system, and the timing set bang on, the bike actually starts quite easily now, or very easily. In fact, I can often start it with just a half a kick on the kickstart, so I don't have to kick with my leg up too high. That's enabled me to carry on kick-starting this old Triumph. Have you owned a motorcycle as long as this, sort of 30 odd years? If you have, let us know in the comments. It'd be great to hear from you. Or anything else you want to say, please leave in the comments. I think it's been a wonderful experience the past 30 years owning this machine. I can't see myself ever letting it go. It's been good and bad. Sometimes when you can't fix something, it can get quite frustrating. But on top of that, when you do finally fix something and it runs lovely, it's very satisfying. And the bike is scruffy. It is for go, not show. It could do with a repaint perhaps, and some re-chroming here and there, but it's going so well at the moment. I really don't want to I don't want to start a full restoration on it, and bearing in mind that I've replaced so many parts over the years anyway, so it's a really good, reliable, solid, fun bike, and it's a bike that you can use in modern traffic. It's plenty fast enough most of the time. You can even go on the motorway. You suffer a little bit from vibration if you're motoring along a bit, but it's not too bad. And we've been from sort of Bedfordshire to the Ace Cafe many times, there and back in a day, and it's quite happy to do it. Well, once again, a special thanks to everyone who's subscribed, and I'm hoping you're enjoying the Grumpy Petrolhead channel. And if you have enjoyed it, and why not stick around? We're going to do some more motorbikes and cars in the near future. And next week we're going to be looking at the history of our 1920s Rolls-Royce, and it certainly has a story to tell. So if you're interested in that, please stick around, and we'll see you next time. Cheerio.